Now, for all the seriousness of the allegations he faces, is the case of Julian Assange descending into farce? One of Mr. Assange's many high-profile supporters, the Respect MP George Galloway, has used one of his video sermons to describe the alleged sexual crimes at the heart of the Assange extradition case as nothing more than bad sexual etiquette. Both Swedish and British law consider the allegations, which Mr. Assange denies, to be covered by the law on rape. We'll debate the case in a moment, but first Jim Reid brings us up to date with reactions to Julian Assange's appearance on the balcony at the Ecuador Embassy in London.
As far as balconies go, this one at just over 5 foot tall isn't so impressive. But as most people know, Julian Assange hasn't got much choice at the moment. Over the weekend, the WikiLeaks founder appeared in the corner window of the Ecuadorian embassy.
As WikiLeaks stands under threat, so does the freedom of expression and the health of all our societies. I ask President Obama to do the right thing. The United States must renounce its witch hunt against WikiLeaks.
The speech covered everything, from WikiLeaks to freedoms in the US, even touching on censorship in Russia. But some of Mr. Assange's former supporters are now asking if he's picking the right fight and are starting to publicly question his tactics.
There is certainly danger. WikiLeaks is was a bigger organisation than Assange. I think there's a broader worry that when the story becomes solely about Assange, that the whole idea of whistleblowing, of access to information, of freedom of information, all focuses in on this one character. It does seem to have become a much more politicised organisation. And certainly Julian Assange personally has become much more politicised.
Critics say Julian Assange is aligning himself with a government that has a poor record on both press freedom and human rights. The strange thing is, by using this balcony in this embassy, he's drawing more attention than ever to that record.
People are pursued through the courts for merely criticising the president, where radio stations face sanction for ironically having hosting programmes about free expression. And this idea of, a great heroic stand for free speech being made by Ecuador and Julian Assange was maybe a little off.
But the one thing Julian Assange didn't want to talk about over the weekend was the claims of sexual assault he's now facing in Sweden, claims he has in the past strongly denied. That wasn't something that the Respect MP George Galloway, a man not known for his diplomatic niceties, shied away from today.
Welcome to Good Night with me, George Galloway.
In his weekly video blog, he claims the women involved agreed to spend the night with Mr. Assange. He appears to question whether the allegations constitute rape itself.
Some people believe that when you go to bed with somebody, take off your clothes and have sex with them and then fall asleep, you're already in the sex game with them. It might be really bad manners not to have tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Do you mind if I do it again?" It might be really sordid and bad sexual etiquette. But whatever else it is not rape. Or you bankrupt the term rape of all meaning.
Sexual abuse campaigners have reacted with anger to those comments tonight. The charity Rape Crisis called the intervention ignorant and factually incorrect. For Mr. Galloway, though, the accusations and this case are part of a wider plot to silence Mr. Assange.
I think it's a setup. I think the whole thing is a setup. And I don't understand how so many of you can't see that.
Now, Craig Murray, a former British diplomat, made a speech in support of Julian Assange at the embassy yesterday. Joan Smith is a newspaper columnist, human rights activist and former chair of the Writers in Prison Committee of International PEN. Do you think this is a case of bad sexual etiquette, as George Galloway put it?
I think there are elements of a setup. I think that incidents which are dubious in themselves as to what happened, and where Julian Assange has denied the accusations against him, are being seized on by those with a political agenda. And I think
the allegations are rape, though, aren't they?
It's well worth people watching us tonight to go online and discover what they can about the allegations, about how they were made, who made them, what those people who made them did afterwards, and looking at what happened.
Well, they might come across what the English Supreme Court said following the Swedish consideration that this was rape. The English Supreme Court said, and I'm quoting here from the extradition proceedings, intentional penetration achieved by coercion or where consent is lacking to the knowledge of the defendant would be considered to be rape. In our view, on this basis, what was described in the extradition proceedings was rape. That's the English Supreme Court. I mean, it's absolutely clear.
There's no doubt that sexual insertion with coercion or without consent is rape.
It's all right. So, bad sexual etiquette. I mean, what do you think that adds to this morass of allegations and questions about setups?
All it does is remind us that there are a lot of people on the left who are unable to separate political conduct from personal conduct. And a lot of people actually admire Julian Assange and WikiLeaks as a project, but they can separate. Personally, I have misgivings about it. At the same time, you know, what Julian Assange is accused of is nothing to do with the WikiLeaks project. It's to do with a form of sexual conduct which the Swedish authorities have wanted to question him about for about 2 years now. And the problem on the left is this idea that if you admire somebody politically, then their conduct is always exemplary and is beyond criticism. And it's not. This is a man facing really serious sexual charges, 4 of them. And yesterday's performance, it was like reverse Evita, do cry for me Argentina, and Ecuador and Peru and everywhere else. It was grandstanding.
It was grand, but knowing what we know about the last 10 years, you know, extraordinary rendition, waterboarding, allegations which amount to torture by the United States, and clearly dirty tricks. I mean, is the idea that this is a setup totally nonsensical?
Well, I think it's nonsensical in terms of what the women say happened. And of course, what's really idiotic about it is that we're discussing it in a studio in London, when the place it should be being discussed is a police station or wherever the investigating authorities want to question Assange in Sweden. That's the proper forum. I don't know whether he did the things he's accused of or not. Neither does Craig. None of us do. And the reason we don't know that is that Assange has resisted going to Sweden. Now, you know, it's true that there are all kinds of dirty tricks going on. However, in this case, the remarkable thing is he's actually safer while he's in Sweden than he is in the UK. The UK has a very soft extradition treaty with the US.
Right. So in other words, the conspiracy theory, whatever there is in it, these women, presumably, you would agree, have a right to have their case heard. I mean, they're making really serious allegations, and the women have rights too.
Let me talk about 4 people, all of whom I know personally. James G., chaplain at Guantanamo, blew the whistle on torture in Guantanamo Bay, was charged with adultery and pornography on a government computer. Janis Karpinski, Brigadier General at Abu Ghraib, blew the whistle on Donald Rumsfeld's sanctioning of torture at Abu Ghraib, was immediately charged with shoplifting. Scott Ritter, UN weapons inspector, entrapped by a honey trap. I was charged myself with sexual coercion of visa applicants after I blew the whistle on extraordinary rendition. Everybody knows that whistleblowers are charged with non-whistleblowing related offences.
And everybody also knows that women sometimes get raped by people who otherwise may perform or otherwise a public service. Now, these charges surely have got to be answered. And why would they not be answered in a Swedish court when he's at lesser risk of extradition to the United States from Sweden than he is from here?
He has made plain continually, as have his supporters, he's prepared to go to Sweden if Sweden will guarantee it will not extradite him to the United States on... They can do that. They can say, we will not extradite you to the United States on WikiLeaks-related charges.
They can't actually react to a warrant, an extradition warrant that they haven't received. And the point is that while he's in this country, he could quite easily be extradited to the US. Once he's in Sweden, then the US has to get the permission of 2 governments, not one, both the Swedish and the UK governments, in order to extradite him. But my problem with this is how insulting it is that all these men, and it is mainly men on the left, you know, are queuing up to cast aspersions on 2 women who are making very serious allegations of sexual wrongdoing. And And those women are as entitled to Assange. They have human rights too. They are entitled to have him answer the case that they have made.
They're entitled to hear him answer the case.
Let's look at the conduct of these women.
How do you know about that?
I know about the conduct of these women the same way you do.
No, I'm not claiming that I do, because
I'm claiming I do.
I am not an expert in the criminal justice system, and neither are you.
I'm going to say some things I know to be true. Who's the one who
sorry,
claims...
you should not be naming a rape,
potential
an
rape
alleged rape victim. You should not be.
Well, then they can look at it on the internet, but please don't name a potential rape.
Why would you do that?
Please do not name
because
a rape
everybody
victim
knows
on
it,
television.
and there's no point in discussing fiction.
You see how little respect this man has for women who've made serious allegations?
That's absolute nonsense. And I would like to say I'm married to a rape victim, and I take the charge, anything to do with rape, extremely seriously.
There's a great difference between you talking about something to do with your wife, presumably with her consent, and you talking about somebody who has no rights in this because she's not here. So if you want to make a point, make the point and do it anonymously. Now, what was your point?
My point is, the lady, the night after what she claims was a physically coerced rape, took Julian Assange with her to a crayfish party. She turned down an offer from someone else
this is all very
to accommodate him. She chaired a meeting at which he spoke. The next day she went to dinner with him again.
These should be tested by the investigating authorities in Sweden, who have experience in the area of sexual abuse and rape. We know very well that a lot of women who have suffered some kind of sexual assault take a while to process the fact of what's happened to them. Rape victims don't always go straight to the authorities. Sometimes they're in a state of shock.
Would you accept that Mr. Assange, from this confinement position, is actually calling the shots in a way? I mean, he's the one who decides when he appears. He has the British police standing underneath him. He has the world's media listening to his every word.
Yes, and it's ironic that Mr. Assange, who claims to be a champion of human rights, is actually expecting this kind of special treatment. He's no different from anybody else. If you or I or Craig, any of us, face serious criminal allegations, we all have a moral and a legal duty to comply with the investigating authorities. So does Julian Assange, and I just want him to go to Sweden, and we can then find out whether he did these things or whether he's innocent.
Thank you very much. Now, a virtual reality style glove that can turn sign language into speech. Well, it sounds pretty impressive.